Hi everyone, this is Ifama Odunlami. I have not done a live in a while, so I'm on Instagram, I'm on YouTube, I'm on Facebook, and if you've noticed, my screen might have changed a bit, and that's because I now have three computer screens. So it changed the dynamics of the way I show up on Facebook Live. I hope this is good though. So today I have a really, really great topic. I haven't been on here for a while, so I'm going to wait for people to come on. And I'm going to click on the comments so I can see your comments when you have questions. So this month of September has been, actually August going into September, has been really, really busy family-wise. My daughter got into college. I took her to college, and honestly, I miss her, you know. So today I want to talk about VAWA. I haven't talked on Facebook Live in a while. And so it's every time you come back and you do it again, it's like you're doing it from scratch, you know. It's like showing up again in public, and it's a little nerve-wracking, but I have some good information for you guys. So I'm going to begin to talk about that. And if you're on, please let me know where you're signing in from, and say hello so I know I'm not speaking to myself. So today I'm going to talk about VAWA, like I said, Violence Against Women's Act. I want to talk about the checklist. What do you need to file a successful VAWA petition? Now, this is a checklist. Each category requires, a lot of stuff that goes into it, but I want to give you this checklist. So at the minimum, you have the basics of what you require. And if you have any questions about it, please feel free to post it in the comments. So back again to those that don't have, if this is your first time tuning in, my name is Ifama Odunlami. I am an immigration attorney. I am also an immigrant, just like some of you who are trying to get your papers. So I know what you're going through. I've been there. I've successfully gotten my papers. I've helped my family get their papers, my mother, my siblings. And I want you to know that it can be done, definitely. And this getting your papers can change the trajectory of your family's life. So let me say hello to some of the people who are signing on. Hi, Pasha from Turks and Caicos. Oh my goodness. Thank you for signing in. I've been to Turks and Caicos. It's a beautiful island, beautiful island. And I'd love to go back there again. So thank you, Portia, for signing in. So we're going to talk about, I'm going to give you the information, and then I'll take questions. So VAWA stands for Violence Against Women's Act. And that name itself is very, it's confusing, because when you hear violence, you're thinking it has to be something really aggressive, like, some physical abuse. But I've said this many times, VAWA does not require you to be physically abused. You do not need to be beaten up to be able to file VAWA, because there are different types of abuse. Abuse does not need to be physical. It can be emotional, it can be psychological, it can be verbal, it can be financial. So when you hear Violence Against Women's Act, I want you to know that it does not preclude you from filing for VAWA if you have not suffered physical violence. As a matter of fact, the requirements of the law says it can be extreme cruelty, right? So I talk about this a lot, so about what qualifies for VAWA, and I want you guys to go through my old recordings. I'm going to do more videos on that in the future, but I want you to know, if the one thing you take from this is that it doesn't have to be physical violence, then that's great. So VAWA also does not apply only to men. So when you hear Violence Against Women Act, you think, okay, it's just for men. No, it applies you think it applies just to women. It applies to men, it applies to children. So the first thing we're going to discuss is who qualifies. Then I'm going to go into the checklist, the things you need to have a successful VAWA application. So who qualifies? Well, first of all, if you have to be married to a US citizen or a green card holder. So for you to qualify to file VAWA, if you're experiencing abuse in your relationship, one category is the category of a spouse, somebody who is married to a US citizen or a green card holder, right? Another category would be that of a child. That can be the child of a US citizen or the stepchild of a US citizen. or green card holder, U.S. citizen or green card holder, interchangeably. Now, the third category is only for U.S. citizens. That would be the parents of U.S. citizens. And the U.S. citizen has to be 21 and above, right? Now, going back to the second category, a child, the child has to file before they turn 21. And if it's a stepchild, the qualifying relationship must have happened before that child turned 18. Now, if you're 21 and you didn't get to file, but you filed before you were 25, you have to show that the reason why you filed late was because of the abuse. Now, the fourth category would be a parent of a child who was abused, even though the parent themselves did not suffer abuse, right? So those are the four categories of the people who qualify for filing VAWA. So let's dig deep into the checklist. So number one, you have to show that the person, your spouse or the parent or the child who is the abuser, is a U.S. citizen, or if it applies, a green card holder. Now, you may think that this is really easy. We can get this information, but for lots of people who are in abusive relationships, they're not able to get that information because either they're, I'm going to talk in with regards to spouse, because that's typically where this scenario plays itself out. They're not able to get those documents because their spouse will not release it. Their spouse never gave it to them. So for them, it's hard to show that the person they're married to has a green card or is a U.S. citizen. But in my firm, that has never been a problem for us. We're able to get those records. We've done many things such as checking public records, checking voting records, checking, doing FOIA's, Freedom of Information Act. There are many ways to get that information. And if all else fails, get the most information you can. If you have a social security number, do what you can and, let USCIS look for the records themselves, right? So just because you don't have that paperwork, I don't want you to be to feel that you cannot get that information. Thinking outside the box is something we really do great at this firm. So it's important to show that that the U.S. citizen or the green card holder, you want to be able to show their that they are a U.S. citizen or green card holder. So if you have their passports, that would work. If you have birth certificates, that will work. Sometimes the marriage certificate that you get married with may have somewhere where it lists where your spouse was born. Some marriage certificates have that. So that's the first thing you need to show. You need to show the evidence of the abusive spouse's citizenship, U.S. citizenship, or their permanent residency status. That's number one. Now, number two is you have to show evidence that you have lived with your abuser. Now, in the context of a married couple, the good news now is that you don't have to show that you live together after marriage. You can show that you live together even before you got married. This is a new law that came up. So as long as you can show that you live together at some point in time, you can meet that residency requirement. And there's no requirement that you live with your abuser for any period of time. There's no requirement that you live with them for at least a week or at least a month. No such requirement, okay? You need to know that. As long as you can prove that at some point you lived with them, you will satisfy that requirement as well. What USCIS is looking for when they're looking at evidence is credible evidence. So if you have affidavits, if you from people that know you live together, like a landlord, your neighbors, or if you have documents that show that you live together, such as a lease, mail that come to the apartment, utility bills, any of that kind of stuff can show that you live together. Okay. Now, the third thing you need to show is that if you have to show the evidence of the qualifying relationship, right? I should have said this before. So the evidence of the qualifying relationship is how are you related to the abuser? So if you're married to the abuser, you want to show the marriage license. If you're the parent of the abuser, you want to show the birth certificate. The same thing goes for if you're the child of the abuser. You can either show a birth certificate, or if the person is your step parent, you want to show the marriage certificate between your parents and show that you were under the age of 18 when they got married, because that's what qualifies that person in immigration language as a step parent, right? So now going back to evidence of familial relationships, I cannot tell you how many people come into my office and their VAWA were denied and they're looking for, for help, right, to appeal it. And the reason the VAWA was denied was simply because they had a divorce decree that was not well done, and then they married the U.S. citizen. Now, if you have a fraudulent or fake divorce decree, that's going to be a problem because it means that your marriage to the U.S. citizen or the green card holder is void, and you cannot get any benefits from that relationship. But there's an exception, one exception. That exception is called the Bigamy Exception. If the U.S. citizen is the one that was married to somebody else and didn't get a proper divorce and married you, you can still qualify for VAWA if you show that, number one, you believed that the U.S. citizen or green card holder was properly divorced and available to marry you. And number two, if you did actually enter into a proper lawful relationship, proper legal marital ceremony, right? So you want to show both of that to be able to take the bigamy exception. And I'm going to tell you, we've gotten quite a bit of cases and we've been able to use that bigamy exception. This bigamy exception does not apply if you are an immigrant who had a fake divorce decree. The rule of thumb is this: if you're married, you must be properly divorced according to the laws of the country where you were married, or where you got your divorce. So what a lot of people don't know is, for instance, I'm going to talk about my Nigerian clients because that's where we get a lot of the fake divorces. They are here in America and they have somebody in Nigeria prepare the divorce decree. And sometimes they're not sure whether it's properly done, and the divorce decree is not properly done. What you don't know and what you should know is, if you're here, you can divorce your spouse in your own country. It doesn't matter where. You can divorce your spouse in your own country, and then you have actually an American divorce, which no one's going to question. So you should know that you don't have to get somebody in your country to file a divorce if you're not there anymore. If you're here in this country, you can divorce your spouse wherever they are in any part of the world, right? And if you got your divorce from your country, you want to make sure that it's a valid divorce in your country, because SJIS will give that, will recognize that divorce. And there's a website called travel.state.gov that basically talks about how what USCIS is looking for in terms of the divorce decrees of each state. So in a case like Nigeria, if you're married in customary court, then they expect a customary divorce. And in some parts of Nigeria, the customary divorce is as easy as returning the dowry. That's it. So in a case like that, typically what we would do is get affidavits from family members to say that the dowry was received. If you get married in high court, you have to have a divorce decree from the high court. Or if you get married in a registry or in a church that requires you to register the marriage, you must have a decree nisi, you must have a decree absolute. Okay? So depending on what country you're from, you want to go and check that website to see what the requirement is for you. So having talked about that, I think we've talked about three things now. We've talked about evidence of the U.S. citizen or the green card holder status. We've talked about the evidence of the qualifying relationship, which I just finished talking about. And we've talked about evidence that you and the abuser have lived together at some point in time. Now, the fourth thing we're going to talk about is evidence of the abuse. Actually, maybe I should step back to evidence of a bona fide relationship, evidence of a real marriage. So this is another thing I see all the time when people come to my office. They filed a VAWA case and it was denied because either they didn't prove that it was a legitimate marriage, or they have something called a 204C finding. A 204C finding is a sham marriage finding. That is the death sentence. Literally, it prevents you from ever getting a green card, period. right? So it's important that when you file for in a marriage petition, you really need to put all the evidence that you have to show it's a real marriage. And I've talked about the kind of evidence USCIS is looking for, talked about it several times. Go through my old videos on YouTube and check it out. So it's either you have a 204C finding, which is awful, or you didn't meet your burden of proof, which means that you didn't show them it was a real marriage. For you to be able to file VAWA, you must prove that it's a bona fide marriage, which means that at the time you entered into the marriage, you entered into it with the intent of being with this person. Whether or not it works out or not, that's fine. But at the time you entered into the marriage, the intention was to have a success, or to have a marriage with a person, live with a person, and not solely for immigration benefits. All right. So I had a consultation, a guy that came into my office one day, and he showed me pictures of the abuse he suffered. He actually had a VAWA denial, and I looked at the pictures that he had submitted for his VAWA, and these were open cut wounds. He had been stabbed. It was terrible. The person that stabbed him went to jail. That was how bad it was. But his VAWA was denied because of the fact that his first marriage, the previous marriage, a prior marriage, had been found to be a sham marriage. And so his VAWA was denied. So in a case like that, I would typically screen the person for other humanitarian paths to a green card. But I want you to understand that this bona fide requirement is really important. And if you were in a prior relationship, a prior marriage, which USCIS felt was not a real marriage, it can stop you from getting your VAWA case approved. So you want to be careful about that, right? So now, the next one we're going to talk about is, so we're still talking about bona fide, proof of bona fide marriage. So what do you do to show that it's a real marriage? Well, USCIS loves financial commingling, because it's really, if people, to be with somebody and to trust the person with having a joint bank account, putting the person on the mortgage or on the lease, and having the person as a life insurance beneficiary on your health insurance, all of these things, right? Car insurance, all of that. It shows that you're in a real relationship according to USCIS, because you trust the person enough to have them be a part of your financial life. Now, you and I know that in real life, couples sometimes want to, do things different. Maybe you have a bank account, you pay the mortgage of the bank account, and another couple, the wife may have another bank account and say, I'm going to pay this bills. You can do that if you're not filing for immigration benefits. But I'm going to tell you now, if you're filing for immigration benefits, make it easy on yourself. Get a joint bank account. And your bank account has to show activity between both of you. It has to show that both parties are using that bank account. It's not helpful if you have a joint bank account and there's only $300 in that account and nothing else happens in that account except, somebody puts in money there. Have a bank account that shows that both of you are using it. Shows 2 debit cards. Shows maybe your pay stubs or pay a direct deposit going into that, showing that you're paying your bills from that. All right. So it's not the evidence you have, it's the quality of the evidence you have. So if you live together and you're not on the lease, because maybe you moved in with your spouse after they already had a lease, see if the landlord can put you as somebody who is allowed to live there. And if you can't, maybe you have neighbors that can write affidavits, or even the landlord can write affidavits saying that you reside there. All right, so those are the tips I'm giving you on that. Now, part of bona fide marriage is also showing a slice of your life. How do you do that? Pictures, lots and lots of pictures. I'm not talking about pictures where they're both of you at Applebee's eating all the time. That's not helpful. I'm going to tell you that. You want pictures that show you with other people, family members, doing fun stuff, traveling, going to the amusement park, pictures that show a slice of your life. In this day and age where we all have cell phones, we can take pictures. This is not back in the day when you had to go buy a disposable camera and take pictures and, oh, I ran out of film. No, that's not the case. There's no reason for anyone not to be able to take pictures that document their lifestyle, their lives with their spouse. All right. Now, I know that sometimes your spouse, the abusive spouse, will refuse to take pictures. Refuse, because they're trying to make things difficult for you. And if that's the case, you want to address that in your declaration, right? And I'm going to come to declaration, which is the core of your VAWA application. All right. So you have to have evidence that it's a bona fide marriage. I've talked about, income tax forms. You have to file your taxes together. I don't care if you're going to make more money if you file separately. There's no reason for you to file separately if you're living together, right? So despite what your accountant tells you, please file separate together, unless you're no longer together. In that case, you must file married filing separately. You should never file single because you're not single. All right. And if you have, call your attorney, call your accountant now, and amend that tax returns. Okay. So other things that USCIS looks at when they're looking at a bona fide marriage is they look at social media. Yep, social media, that's a big one. I look at social media myself. I check out what my clients have online. If you're online acting like you're single when you're married, that's a problem. They see it. So if you are on social media, your social media should reflect that you're married and you should act like you're married. There should be no, you don't want to have anything that could cause them to doubt that you're married. And if you're on social media and you don't have pictures of your spouse and nothing, that's also suspect. It's not just having the pictures, the lack of it, unless you're not on social media. But I want you to know that anything you have on social media, the USCIS will check it, and they are checking it. So that's something you want to be careful about, okay? Then we look at shared experiences, vacations. If you're traveling, you want to, if you have tickets to show you're traveling, or pictures to show yourselves at destinations that are, popular destinations or whatever it is. We went to the White House together with your spouse, went to, see a show together, Madison Square Garden, whatever it is, you want to show evidence of your shared experiences with your spouse. Okay. I know during COVID, it was a little difficult to have those shared experiences. So if you don't have one, you need to have a lot of the other, because it's not one thing. There's no one requirement that you must have this, but you want to have as much as you can, to show them what your life is like. Right. And like I said, if there's a problem, you want to address that in your declaration. So talking about, let me move on to the next thing you have to have is you have to have proof that you're a good person, proof of good moral character. So what USCIS typically requires is that if anywhere you've lived in for at least more than 6 months and above for the past 3 years, you need to get a police clearance from those cities, or you can get an FBI report showing that you've never been arrested. Now, if you have been arrested, what we typically look at is to see if, what were you arrested for? All crimes are not equal. Okay. Sometimes you may have to file a waiver, based on a certain crime that was committed. And if it's an aggravated felony, that's going to be a no-no. Okay. All right. So let's now talk about the one thing you must have. You must have a declaration. A declaration is your story. Your story. How did this happen? How did you meet your spouse? How was the relationship when you first started dating? When did it stop being a good relationship? What happened? You begin to talk about the things you went through, how it made you feel, who if you have witnesses to any of the things that happen, or you have documentary evidence such as a temporary restraining order, a police report, hospital report, all those are great, but you don't need them. Because remember, abuse does not have to be physical. It can be emotional, it can be financial, it can be verbal, it can be psychological, right? So your declaration is the crux of your case. This is your voice. This is you talking about what you've been through. It has to be compelling, right? You have to be able to discuss what happened, right? And another thing that you must have on your checklist, this is not required all the time, but sometimes a psychological report is helpful, especially in psychological abuse cases, okay? Because a lot of those psychologists, when they talk to you, they can get the story from you, and they can write about what you've been through and put in a diagnosis. If you've seen a therapist, that's also great. Sometimes even the people in your church, you know, if you're talking to a church, or if you're a Muslim, a mosque, or whoever your religious leader is, if you have somebody who is helping you through the process, that person could also write an affidavit about that. So I think that's pretty much all I have to talk about. But VAWA is a lifeline for a lot of people. And VAWA, the great thing about VAWA is it doesn't matter how you came into the country. It doesn't matter if you came in with a visa, expired visa, didn't come with a visa. Doesn't matter. Also, you don't need an affidavit of support. You don't need to find somebody that can file an affidavit of support showing that they're making enough money to support you, because your VAWA is your self-petition. All right. I got to go soon, so let me take a couple of questions real quick. So Stephen Miller says, I got my work card and 3 days later my social security was mailed to me. You think that the traveling document is next? My I-485 is still pending. So Stephen Miller, this is what happened, right? Because USCIS is really trying to get a hold of the backlog with work permits. What we're seeing right now is that they're actually getting the work permits out first, and then later on getting the travel permit. Actually, I had a client that came in just this morning. We filed her petition 3 weeks ago. She got her work permit. But the unfortunate thing is the travel permit is not coming with it. So you will get the travel permit. That's, you know, you're going to get it. But I can't tell you how long it's going to take, because it depends on where you filed your case. Every lockbox has a different has different times regarding how long it's going to take. But I can tell you it's taking, for in some places, 10 months, 13 months, you know. But primarily, I would say that when you get both of them together, your work permit and your travel permit is usually taking 6 to 10 months. But you're going to get it. It's just that USCIS decided to bifurcate the process to make it quicker to get work permits for people, because people are really looking to work, you know. So Alaji says, Alaji says, please, anyone looking for the good and responsible attorney in America, this woman is the best lawyer. She knows what she's doing. Her and her team are the best. Thank you so much, Alaji. I really appreciate your vote of confidence. And so that is what I'm giving you guys for today. I know I haven't been around in a month. It's been so hectic because one of my paralegals is on maternity leave. She's having a baby. Congratulations to her. And so we had to hire and train, and, you know, so we've been really busy. But starting October, I'm going to really try to come in here, because it's very important for you guys to be to have this information, because education is power. I can't tell you how many people come into my office and we could have helped them, but they listen to bad advice, because there's so many people giving this wrong advice, so many of them. And I want you to be that immigrant who's not listening to advice from people who are not immigration attorneys. Don't even let a real estate attorney file your immigration case. Look for an immigration attorney who specializes in the area you're looking for. So when I have people coming here asking for, or an employer wants to file for them, I don't do employment immigration. I refer them to somebody else. So you want somebody who is a specialist in the area that they work. My specialty is family-based immigration. We do VAWA, we do family-based, K visa, U visa, special immigrant juvenile visa, DACA, family-based and humanitarian-based immigration, and we do deportation defense as well. So do yourself a solid and go to the right person, okay? All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I will sign out because I have a meeting at 11:03. I'm late. All right, take care.